And I'm joined here today by Kimberley from QBE, welcome, and Ria from Gallagher Bassett, welcome.
Thank you.
You've just come off stage, you were on the panel. I'm going to read out your topic because it's quite the topic. Mental health and psychological safety, ensuring healthy workforces through holistic approaches to tackle the growing impact within the Australian workforce. Now, to start with, talk to me about the growing impact of mental health in the workplace. What's happening?
Well, I think the last few years, and certainly through COVID, we've seen massive increases in mental health claims in our organisations. So firstly, aside from scheme mental health, we've also seen significant impacts for our colleagues in the industry. Those that are supporting injured workers or anybody in the scheme. And that's really resulted in a couple of things. Firstly, people exiting the scheme to a certain degree and really making big life-changing decisions. It's not necessarily exiting the scheme per se, but just big decisions about life and work and self and well-being and balance and all those wonderful things. If you were in Victoria, you didn't really have that opportunity to make some of those decisions. But sort of since COVID, as we've sort of all started to get back up onto our knees and back onto our feet, we've really started to see people having different expectations of employers to support their mental health, not only because of the mass influx of mental health claims and the way that we're needing to support people since COVID, but moreover, really looking to us as their sort of North Star of mental health support. We heard yesterday from Dr. Ben that really people are looking to employers to support their mental health and well-being through programs, through good leadership, through good support networks. And we've had to make quite a significant shift in that regard through good leadership practices, through good side-to-side and peer support, mental health care workers in our organisation, and really strong EAP providers. So we've seen quite a shift in dynamic. Not only that, is also the demand for balance and that sort of discretionary effort that was talked about yesterday has certainly changed. Not necessarily sort of significantly enough for us to be too concerned about it at this point, but certainly people wanting to say, I want to have a work-life balance mentally, physically, emotionally, and for my organisation to support that more fully than perhaps we've had previously.
And how, Kimberley, have you seen employers reacting? Because I'd imagine some employers are reacting, grabbing it, changing, doing their best. I'd also imagine some employers are really struggling.
I think that both can exist at the same time, right? I think that it is very rare for me to find an employer who is not absolutely trying to figure out a way to do the best thing for the people who work for them. I also think, though, they have a significant amount of pressure around them for resources that they have allocated to them that are not infinite. And so I think this is where, for us as a claim service provider or an insurer, because, I mean, again, who's here is a really diverse network of how we interplay with the schemes that we're in, is how we support them. I didn't get a chance to talk to it on the stage, but, we obviously learn a lot about what goes wrong in workplaces. My branch or my portfolios and the teams that I support are the litigation spaces heavily. So unfortunately, what my teams tend to see is where everything, really transpired to end up with somebody who absolutely had an entitlement to a common law claim, but there is probably some factors in that could have mitigated the risk there. So I think some of the approaches that employers are looking is from a risk prevention strategy for sure, but then once a claim is a claim, how do they infuse what went wrong back into the front end of their processes? And some strong runs on the board that are happening is when they infuse their HR programs or their HR resources with their recovery teams, because it happens naturally, right? It's not something that has to be a really formal feedback loop. It's that you're sitting next to somebody, even if you're in a hybrid workforce, and you naturally hear about something that went wrong in a claim and how something fell down in a HR process. I said it and I mean it, I don't think that anyone, very rarely, is coming to work to do a bad job, whether you're sitting on our side or their side. And I don't think any leader is trying to inflict harm on their people. So, I think it's once you become aware of that could have been done differently and that could have been done better. And as Ria said, what is being demanded of those workforces is different, and they have to move at a pace with which sometimes their resources are not equipped to deal with.
And the panel spoke about holistic approaches, and that's what you're talking about there, and capturing the development of a potentially mental health condition at its various points, right? So describe to me in your view that how organisations can holistically approach this risk.
Of mental health conditions. I mean, I think that it is a spectrum, and I think the injury prevention space, it comes into play here. And for us, when we support employers through injury prevention, it is genuinely about establishing where they are. No employer sits on the same starting line, and we're trying to establish what they have in play and what works really well against the culture and some of the feedback that they have through their voice surveys or through some of their data that they have. But then also linking that to things like, the strategic priorities that they already have on the deck. Most employers are actually already risk adverse. They're not, it's not a hard sell for them or for us to tell them that they should do something to consider the life cycle of an employee in their mental health spectrum. What it is they've got so much on the deck. When do they do it and how do they do it? So when we can link it to something that's already in play, and that's where the EAP thing, most workforces, I haven't met a workforce that doesn't already have EAP, but do they utilise it to the best advantage? I don't think that they do. Most people know about EAP as your leader might say it to you when you've had a bad day or you're in performance management or there's been a critical incident debrief. And my reaction and certainly feedback that we get is that it seems disingenuous. You've wrapped up a challenging conversation with a flyaway comment, even though that was unintended, with make sure you reach out to your EAP provider if you're having a bad day. Versus using and deploying EAP as a wellbeing gateway that we all utilise, and doesn't have to be. Ria spoke to me earlier so beautifully and articulately about, I am somebody who has no energy at the end of the day to sit on a phone talking to anyone. So I could be having the worst day possible and I am not picking up the phone. And that's where things like the use of apps and whatnot, and getting really mature in the supports that you provide your teams, is I think a simple strategy. For QBE as well, for our workforce, connecting people to core purpose, because sometimes on those hard days you forget what it is you're doing. You're just, I hear it all the same. Case managers say, I'm just a case manager. I don't have an impact.
I'm processing tasks.
And I think if you're not here, I'm not here, and none of us are here. But we do have to connect them to purpose, right? And connect them back to that why and what do we do. I say it all the time to them. What we do matters to significant cohorts of people. They're vulnerable and they need us. And when we do it poorly, it matters not just to that individual person, but it matters to communities of people around them whose lives are completely changed by it. We know that, and we know those horrible stories. So I think connecting them to purpose of what they do in the day-to-day, but then also for our employers, connecting them to their greater organisation's purpose as well. So for QBE, obviously, connecting our case managers to their purpose, but for the employers we support, connecting them to that purpose of what their organisation delivers.
And I'm sorry, Ria, and I'd be really interested in your views, but doesn't it put a huge responsibility on leaders?
Look, absolutely, and I think it's something that all industries need to do differently and better. We're an interesting industry in the fact that we have superb technical experts, and we've all been in businesses where organisations will promote a subject matter expert who is a wonderful senior technical claims leader or subject matter expert, and then they will be promoted into a leadership role. And invariably on the basis of such a shift in scheme over the last couple of years and just the sheer influx and volume that we've had. What that often means is that leader, to Kimberley's point earlier on, is not only managing the people leader aspect of their role and function, they're also potentially also managing a portfolio or a caseload. They're also managing their own personal and professional lives. They're possibly sort of wondering what they're doing. They may or may not be seeking feedback. And so those really strong frameworks of good people leadership, active management, understanding the role and the function, having good clarity is critical. As senior leaders, we need to make sure that we are clearing the pathway for people to be successful. And actually that might be a difficult discussion because we may actually uncover some things in our organisation that those fabulous frontline people leaders are in fact bolstering and covering for us and sort of saying, oh, actually I didn't realise this work was happening over here, I didn't realise that work was happening over there. So I think getting really deep into the organisation, sort of all the way through, through to frontline, all the way back up again, but engaging our frontline leaders, their supervisors, branch managers, operations managers, general managers, all the way through to understand what work looks like. Kimberley's put it beautifully earlier on around AI and what that does in our business. I mean, jeepers, that is a very different world than we've been in over the last few years, certainly very different from the world of work I entered into a number of years ago. But what it actually allows us to do is really critically look at the work that we're doing. And Ben put it beautifully yesterday when he said we just end up putting more stuff on top of it. And I think we actually have to just get really good with allowing ourselves some space for the professional development, for the growth, for us to have connected discussions with people in the business about cross-functional matters that may affect me, may affect Kimberley, may affect yourself, that we're interested in exploring and doing. That creates stickiness in an organisation as well. But for the last couple of years, we've really just been sort of everyone kind of getting in and getting some work done. We've seen a 30% growth in our business over the last 12 months, which is phenomenal.
It's a lot, yes.
But it means that we've got good opportunities to articulate roles and accountabilities, outcomes for the business. And to Kimberley's point, being very clear on our purpose. So we have 5 strategic pillars across the business, people being one of them. But we spend a lot of time in our business as an executive and as a senior leadership team really helping people understand our vision and our purpose and the work that they do connecting to that. And we do that over a series of quite deliberate events throughout the year, strategic planning that being then cascaded locally, and everybody having a chance to understand what that looks like for them and their role. So yes, leadership is an ongoing challenge, and a really exciting one, actually. Something I'm personally hugely passionate about. I have organisational development in my team, and we're really looking at this quite strategically at the moment and saying, what does this need to look like, not only for now, but for the next generation of leaders in our business too.
So the theme today was the future of work. What's the future of work for you?
Oh, great question. Well, look, I think what we've absolutely heard is that automation, AI, digital processing, bots, all of those wonderful things are here. They're here to stay, and geez, that's exciting. That transforms. And I said it on stage. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I think about when she enters the workforce and can look after me in my old age. That it's a completely different dynamic than we've ever seen before. So that's very much here to stay. I think the expectations of employees to an employer will continue to change and evolve. I think people are much more equipped with an understanding of their mental and physical well-being. We've talked a lot in the industry around flexibility, and that's just a status quo now. People come into an organisation and say, I'm expecting this now. We need to understand what flexible working looks like and what it looks like meaningfully for people. But I think more importantly, and the next generation of people coming through our business is fundamentally about purpose. So as an employer, we need to demonstrate the purpose of our organisation. And years ago, you used to go to a job interview and you'd be selling yourself. Now we're in a situation in a job market where colleagues are coming to us and saying, you tell me where I come and work for you. So it's actually a really interesting dialogue, and maybe to a certain extent we've levelled the playing field, which I love, because we should be selling ourselves. We do great work, and to be able to be in an environment where we can sell that to future colleagues, it's a really exciting opportunity, I think.
And Kimberley, the future of work.
I mean, look, I think obviously it's hard to build on what Ria has said, because I think it is that. For me, I think, and for QBE, there is a journey of modernisation and simplification that is anchored by our people and the commitment we make to people. I think from a modernisation and simplification space, we work in heavily regulated spaces that make modernisation and simplification challenging, and I don't want people to feel disenfranchised by, seeing AI today and yesterday and thinking we're not there yet. There are small inroads that you can make before you get to the long journey. This is a long game, and the outer industry is probably always going to work at a pace quicker than we can work at. The panel earlier spoke to the legacy systems and the legacy views that we all hold. The generations coming through our workforces hold us to account, and I love it because they come to the table with things that I've never considered, and they are bold and empowered to say things that I would just never have said when I was at that path of my career. So the modernisation and simplification journey, I think, is in stages, about dismantling processes and practices that no longer serve us.
Yes.
But I also think that you need to look for more simple places to then build to future states as well. And I think also we all rise together. I don't think that this sort of collective group and the coming together of this collective group really affirms for all of us that we are rising together, and when we win or one of us wins, we're all winning together.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, all of our whys, whenever you ask anybody across this whole industry, it is always about helping people on the worst days of their lives.
Yes, very much so.
And in terms of the people space, one of the ways and one of the whys for me of why QBE is about some of the diversity of inclusion work that we do, and our workforces matching the workforces of our communities, or the demographics of our communities. And I think when we do that well and allow people to authentically show up as they are, support them, be flexible in how we do things and what we do, with the crux being that these are our strategic priorities, they have a great affirmation of that infuses their work, and I think our customers appreciate that. So there's probably lots, we do have more strategic priorities than that, but I think that that's probably, what this conference speaks to.
Yes.
Well, thank you both for your contribution to the conference. Thanks for your contribution today, and welcome to podcasting. It's the start of a new future of work for all of us.
It's the start of Insurance FM.
It's Insurance FM. Here
You'll
we
see
go.
us here next time.
Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Thank you.